introduce you this morning to Brian. He's our guide, and we're going to spend the next 2.5 hours with him, and he takes us around Belfast.
It's his birthday too.
No. Brian. Mike was a guide, I think.
It's probably the chap we met in the swimming bath the other morning.
My name's Brian. Hi. Good morning and welcome to Belfast. Sunny Belfast. It's not often I can say that. We're going to take you around Belfast. We're not going to shy away from anything. Everybody knows Belfast for the wrong reasons usually, so we're trying to get away from that, but we will cover areas that sort of suggest a rather troubled past, but we'll leave that to the end. By that time you'll have mostly forgotten we'd had a troubled past. Hopefully. Now the good news, I'm not from Belfast.
That's a bloody good
Why is that good news? You'll be able to understand most of what I say. If I was from Belfast, you would understand about 1 out of every 5 words. I should know I was married to a lovely Belfast lady for 8 blissful years. And they were blissful, while I could understand just 2 out of every 5 words. Now, once I went up to 4 out of 5, it really was time for the divorce courts. It's not the accent, it's more the speed at which they talk. That's always a bit of a problem. And as Belfast people get more excitable, they get even faster. When they get angry, it's nigh on impossible to understand what they're saying. So that's the advantage. Now, the good thing is I have been involved in Belfast. I've worked in Belfast for most of my life, so I do know a little bit about it. So I'll try and impart some of that knowledge on the way round. Some of it will be useless, but you'll be able to sort out what's useful and what's not. Now we're going to go straight to the Parliament buildings of Northern Ireland. Now these are very controversial. The very fact that they exist is controversial, and the fact that Northern Ireland itself should exist, equally controversial to many people. So on the way up, I'll give you just a little idea of how that happened. I'm not going to go back centuries, there's no point. 1912 is usually far enough. That's when the British government introduced for the 3rd time the Home Rule Bill. This was an attempt at giving all of Ireland some form of limited self-government. It wasn't independence, it was more like a form of devolution. But the Unionists in the northeast part of Ireland, they didn't want it. They were led by a Dublin-born barrister, a man called Edward Carson, and you're going to see a large statue of him at the Parliament buildings. That makes him controversial to start with. Edward Carson had no intention of just objecting politically. He raised a private army, the Ulster Volunteers. 90,000 men, they were well trained, they were well armed, and they were ready, if need be, to take up arms against their own government, to maintain, as they saw it, their place inside the United Kingdom. But then equally determined to make sure the Home Rule Bill was implemented and in full, the southern counties of Ireland, they raised their private army, the Irish Volunteers. Now they weren't as well trained, they weren't as well armed as the Ulster Volunteers, but there was a lot more of them. Many of the nationalist-minded men in the north part of Ireland had joined their ranks. In fact, Ireland was on the brink of civil war, and it would have erupted but for the outbreak of the First World War. That changed so many things here. The men of the Ulster Volunteers, they enlisted en masse into the British Army. They made up the core of the 36th Ulster Division. You'll see reference to them in some of the murals on the Shankill Road later. But men of the Irish Volunteers, they also enlisted in the British Army to make up parts of the 10th and parts of the 16th Irish Divisions. But 10% of the Irish Volunteers could not be convinced. They went on to become, amongst other things, the IRA. The 10th Irish Division, they were decimated at a place called Gallipoli in 1915. The following year, the 16th Irish and the 36th Ulster Divisions, they too were decimated at the Battle of the Somme. When the war had ended, 40,000 Irishmen had died. Nationalist and Unionist Irishmen, many of them dying alongside each other on the battlefields of the Western Front, but for very different reasons. The Unionist was fighting and dying to prove his loyalty to king and country, whereas the Nationalist was fighting and dying for the freedom of small nations, of which he hoped Ireland was soon to be one. But then when the Home Rule Bill was reintroduced after the war, it was in a different format, and the 6 counties of the northeast part of Ireland would now be given their devolved government, based in Belfast, with the rest of Ireland, the other 26 counties, being given their devolved government based in Dublin. Well, the Unionists of the northeast of Ireland, they jumped at the opportunity. They felt now they could do no better. But the rest of Ireland, they rejected it. They didn't want the partitioning of Ireland, and nor did they want limited freedom anymore. We're going to go up to the right here. They went into what became their War of Independence with Great Britain. Well, one war of independence followed then by a civil war, and many hours of negotiation later, and things in the northeast part of Ireland would remain very much the same inside the United Kingdom, but now dominated by a unionist run government, a devolved government. This would remain the case until 1972, when the violence that had erupted in 1969 then spiralled out of control. The Westminster government stepped in and took over complete control of Northern Ireland. But then in 1998, the historic Good Friday Agreement was signed, and it did bring an end to 30 years of horrific violence. It also created the Northern Ireland Assembly, and that's where we go to now, where that assembly meets. 108 members of the Legislative Assembly now govern this part of Ireland. They are led by 2 First Ministers. Both of them have exactly the same power, but one can't do anything without the say-so of the other. So they have to cooperate, even though they come from very opposite sides of the political divide, with one representing the unionist and the other representing the nationalist tradition. Unfortunately, when people come to Belfast for the first time, they do seem confused as to what to call the 2 sides. Now, it certainly doesn't help when some people here that should know better still refer to them as Catholics and Protestants. That is just insulting, especially to the minority religions that live here, that are every bit as entitled to a political point of view as anyone else. Just go straight through. You're welcome, not literally. So you've got unionists and nationalists. That's it. That's how you generalise. And you can't go wrong by saying unionist or nationalist. For those people that wish to remain part of the United Kingdom, the unionists, they see those clamouring for a united Ireland, the nationalists, as the opposition, and vice versa. It matters not one iota what religion any of them are or happen to be. And that can be proved quite simply. For if you were to change the religion of everyone in Northern Ireland and made them an equal mix of every religion under the sun, and made half of them unionist and half of them nationalist, the problem remains the same. It doesn't matter what religion. Some want in, others want out. While their politics remain the same, the problem stays the same. Unfortunately, religion has been dragged into the Irish problem on so many occasions in the past. People have used it as a way to discriminate, to intimidate, and to kill. Religion is not the Irish problem. And when people assumed it was a problem all over Europe between different factions of Christianity. Now, for 200 years, there has been issues in Ireland as to whether to remain part of the United Kingdom or to have an independent Ireland. And then when Ireland was partitioned, it created a new set of issues. Religion, in a way it's part because most of the nationalists are Catholic, most of the unionists are Protestant. But look at Scotland. They've got issues as to whether to remain part of the union or not, but they're not divided on the religious basis. All the yes voters weren't Protestant or Catholic, and all the no voters weren't Catholic. So it's just, unfortunately, the way it's sort of fallen in Ireland. Originally, Ireland was a very Catholic country, and when the Reformation came, although most of Great Britain converted to Protestantism, in Ireland, that little stretch of water prevented the conversion for many of them. Now we're turning left now into the Parliament buildings of Northern Ireland. They are impressive, they really are, and they were designed to be by Arnold Thornley. On the left of it are red-twigged lime trees. They are deliberately planted ever so slightly out from each other to give the illusion that as we approach the main buildings, it appears that the trees then start to give way to give you a much better view of the building. All of the lamps in this estate were donated by the Canadian government. It looked like Ireland was being given Dominion status similar to that which Canada enjoyed within the British Empire. Well, it turned out not to be the case, but we kept the lamps anyway. The statue of Edward Carson dominates the front of the building. You'll see just how when we get closer to it. Unionist hero, of that there can be no doubt. But for him, Northern Ireland would not exist. Yet he didn't want Northern Ireland to exist. He wanted all of Ireland to remain inside the parameters of the United Kingdom. When he realised that that was no longer an option, he felt that he'd failed personally in what he'd set out to achieve. He later chose to opt out of not just Irish politics, but out of Ireland. Before he left, he gave the fledgling unionist government some words of advice. First, reminding them of their fear of being a persecuted minority within a nationalist-dominated all-Ireland state. He told them to make sure then that they treat their minorities well, lest they should ever feel that way. Only history can decide how many were listening. But the buildings were built basically as a building that showed the link to Great Britain. The 6 columns represent the 6 counties of Northern Ireland. Above those columns you'll see a little scene going on. That is a handing over of the flame of loyalty to the Crown and to the British Empire. It's all linked to the politics of the time that brought about the partitioning of Ireland. And even Britannia at the top. It was seen as a bastion of unionist domination by many of the nationalist tradition, and it's understandable why. We'll go round the statue and then we'll go out at a right angle to the way we came in, but we'll pull over and let you off to take photographs. You can get better photographs when you're not through windows. Catholicism and extreme Protestantism in Northern Ireland is exactly the same. No divorce, no abortion. You know, they've got the same moral values, if you like, but they just hate each other's religion. It's one of those things.
Nice to have that so well explained. Nice to understand the situation properly.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Well, but religion's just, if a religion was taken out of the equation, it'd still be
the same. Yeah.
So you're
not a member in there, are you?
No. The Americans are great. When they come on the cruise ships, they actually say, well, on the way up to the Giant's Causeway, why do you paint all your sheep? It's easy. Well, we're born unionist or nationalist. We know it in our hearts what we are. Sheep have no idea. Yeah. So you then have to paint some of the sheep red, white and blue, and others green, white and orange. Right. And then they go, oh my God, I didn't think it was that bad. And then how do you go to telling them, are you joking? So they've made themselves appear very stupid, so you think, I'll just leave it. Then they go home and they tell everybody, you know, they paint their sheep. So then the next thing they say, why are all your flags at half-mast? Because all the lampposts have flags on them. That's the length their ladders reach. I go, that's so funny. No, that's the truth. The length of the line. But they go away with completely strange opinions of the place. You know? Yeah, they can. And they just go, that'll take. So the Yanks are going back, spreading the word over America that we're all nuts. And we're painting our sheep red, white, and blue. It's good fun. The Americans are so funny. They said to me, when are you going to get those British out and give Ireland back to the Irish? I says, we've actually agreed it. Really? I says, yeah, we're doing it 1 year after America gets handed back to the Red Indians. They're horrified. They don't see the hypocrisy, you know.